I think the people that are inclined to go into DJing tend to be music fans. They love music. And sometimes DJing is not playing the music you love and demonstrating that for people. It's finding out the music they love and playing it back to them in a way that makes them happy. It's a service business. And so if you're looking at it going, hey, I love music, I can't wait to share this with people, I think there may be some reality checks along the way, and you just want to be careful not to turn your passion into something that drives you nuts because everybody wants to hear Bruno Mars again, right? I'm not there to play my music for people, right? And so I'll play anything you people want to make sure that you're happy.
Well, hi there, and welcome back to Side Hustle Hero, the podcast that inspires action and helps you to grow your side hustle into a thriving income stream. I'm your host, Joan Posivy. Ever thought about how you could juggle your day job while turning a love for music into a lucrative side hustle? That's what Ross Anderson has done. By day, he's a financial planner, but on the weekends, he transforms into a DJ, more precisely, a wedding DJ. Ross started DJing back in his teenage years and now runs a business with revenues up to $95,000 a year, all while keeping his full-time career. In this episode, Ross shares his strategy to maximize his income from a single-day event, essential gear that you need to get started, how smart rentals can keep startup costs low, how to drum up business if you're just starting out, and what he does to nail the client experience, resulting in a business that now runs solely on referrals. But in addition to sharing tips, tricks, and resources for aspiring DJs in general, he provides actionable advice that can help you start or scale any side hustle, no matter the industry. But before all that, if our chats are sparking your entrepreneurial spirit and providing valuable insights, consider giving the show a caffeinated thumbs up by shooting me over a virtual coffee. It's a real thing over at sidehustlehero.com/support. Thank you so much. Now here's my conversation with financial planner and sought-after DJ, Ross Anderson. Welcome, Ross.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So how does a financial planner by day become a wedding DJ person by night? To me, they sound like worlds apart, but maybe that's part of the allure.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I was a DJ way before I was a financial planner. It's been in my life for a very long time.
Wow.
I actually grew up playing the drums. I was playing the drums as a 6-year-old and marching in parades and things like that as a kid. And then I ended up just being interested in the DJ world as I kind of got into music more, really in middle school and high school.
Okay.
And then started doing events that young. I was doing kind of community pool parties and things for my neighborhood. And as a very young person, kind of figured out that, number one, I thought it was fun. And then when I figured out that people would pay me for it, I got really excited. I thought, this is fantastic. We should do more of this. And then it kind of morphed from there and turned into, I think, the best college job that you can have. It's flexible. You're making way more than your friends are for like a single day's work. It's only weekends for the most part, and ended up just carrying that through. So that's been part of my life for a very long time. And
Right.
at one point I thought I was going to stop doing it, but the love has just kind of kept burning, and it's been honestly a blessing. I feel so lucky to have had that avenue and to be able to still do it today.
So you've really grown up with the industry as well, from the time it was all 45s and LPs, and we're kind of going back there now, aren't we?
We really are. Yeah, we were carrying books of CDs around. I wasn't DJing as much on traditional vinyl. This was kind of the end of the 90s when I got into it. But
Yep.
So it was a lot of CD books that we used to carry around. Thankfully, we don't need to do that anymore.
But when you mentioned doing it in your school years, I was thinking back to my days in that realm as well, thinking, okay, that was a pretty sexy job to have too, with the girls looking at the DJ.
I thought it was going to be way cooler. Ultimately, it's just carrying a bunch of stuff around and sweating through your clothes all the time. But
Right.
so there's not as much coolness to it in practice, but definitely there's an image there that if you can cultivate it, it seems to be fun.
Well, many years ago, I was in the fresh flower business, predominantly wholesale. If you go into a convenience store, oftentimes they'll have 2 or 3 carnations wrapped up fresh. That was my business. And we also did events. And back then, our flower mentors said, stay clear of weddings. No matter how good the arrangements are, the bride or the groom or the family, they're going to find something wrong with them. Instead, focus on funerals. And
Oh,
I thought that was interesting. But now looking at your website, it appears that you've niched down to focus on weddings.
almost exclusively. Yeah, no,
Really?
that's really been the more I did it, and because it's the side hustle for me, my hope is I basically want to maximize what I can do in a day. I'm not trying to max out the
Mm,
number of days that I work. I'm not trying to max out on other things because I think some DJs are hoping that they can do karaoke on a Tuesday and then a bar gig on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and they're just trying to figure out how many days they can work
got
and
it.
earn something. For me, I want just the highest revenue day that I can produce because I'm not going to give it that many days of my year. And so
Mm,
weddings are really good for that because they tend to be a little bit more intricate. I deal with fairly high pressure situations frequently. I'm
yeah.
not concerned that pressure doesn't bother me. And so to me, that's been a great niche because I love that space and it lets me do exactly what I want to do.
Well, being a financial planner, I mean, that's a respectable amount of a time commitment. How did you juggle starting your DJ business, kind of, I guess, taking it more seriously, more consistently while maintaining that full-time career?
The thing that allowed me to do it, and so much of my life has just been getting lucky at the right times and having some things fall into to place. A lot of financial advisors and planners are out hunting for business. And I was in a role where I didn't have to do that. I was basically in a 9 to 5 where I was servicing a large book of business and I was working with clients, but I wasn't having to go out and find them. And so my evenings and weekends were completely free. I
Mm,
wasn't out prospecting. And so I
got it.
kind of still had that entrepreneurial itch where I was like, hey, I still want to be doing something. I've kind of got this time. And so when I kind of went out on my own and hung my own shingle, that's when I was doing it is I had the evening and weekend time and it just didn't bother me. But if you've got kind of multiple sales roles, that's really, really tough. That would make it very difficult.
Okay. How did you get word out?
So the first couple years, I thought about it through the lens of I'm willing to just break even. And I did
Okay.
a whole bunch of stuff. I was doing, there's kind of bridal showers or wedding shows where you go and you set up a booth and you stand around for 6 hours and just talk to 150 couples, and those are a
Mm.
mess. Those are a very long day. I was paying for advertising, so you've got some big wedding brands like the Knot and Wedding Wire, which are now like the same thing. I was going
Okay.
to networking events, shaking as many hands as I could, and then what? Even if all those things didn't actually make me money, if I just broke even, every time I got to perform, I tried to treat that as an opportunity. How do I connect with the person on site, the venue person? How do I make sure that I am the best person the wedding coordinator or planner has ever worked with so that when she needs a DJ next week and she thinks about all these dopes that she's worked with in the past, that like we're going, hey, I want to be top of your list. Like I'm going to be as clean and easy to work with as possible. And so, yeah, it was just do as good of a job as you can. And ultimately now I don't advertise it at all. It is all word of mouth. It's all referral. And so I was willing to spend a little bit more in those early days. I was willing to just say, hey, I don't care if I make a lot of money in this first year. I'm just
Right.
trying to plant enough seeds to get it going.
And how long do you think, thinking back, that it took to finally get some momentum where people were calling you?
Uh, to me, it was probably 2 to 3 years. I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't working. So prior to that,
Right.
I had been subcontracting for other folks. I think the first year I hung a shingle for myself, I did 8 or 9 weddings that next year. Right. So
Okay.
not a ton, but enough that was productive. And then I think I was at like 20 the year after that. And so I kind of overspent a little bit in those first couple of years, and 2 to 3 years in, it basically hit where I wanted it to be. And that's been kind of what I've maintained.
Right. How long has it been since then?
So I was subcontracting until the end of 2015.
Okay. So
And so
somebody else was getting the gigs and they were hiring you.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And
All
and
right.
so I was just going out under their brand. And so
Yep.
you hand out their business cards and they get a piece of the money. And that's okay. That's a great way to do it. And
Mhm.
if I were getting started, that's probably how I would get started because finding people to talk to is the toughest part. So it's worth it for somebody that's new and not sure if they want to really pursue this to not go out and buy all the stuff and set up a website and all the branding. You're going to just
Right.
do a lot more work to start
Yeah.
that way.
I was going to ask you for some tips or guidance on how to start, like for somebody starting that business these days. where they would even begin to get work?
With all things, you have to start with your network. Where do you hang out? Where do you spend time?
Right.
Right. And so if you're a member of a gym, talk to the trainers at the gym and say, hey, let's do a live DJ spin class. Even if they don't pay you anything, if you get to show up, set up some speakers, have some fun, have people know that you did it, like that gets the word out. So anywhere people can see you perform, if there's community events, if there's charitable organizations you're interested in.
Right.
Some people say don't give away that work, because you certainly can. You can give away work right into the poorhouse if you want to, but I think you have to get out and do it. And especially if you're inexperienced, I think that's a good way to get your feet wet. Typically lower stakes events. If the music cuts out in the middle of spin class, nobody's getting fired, right?
That's right. Yeah.
That's a good way to do it, is to anywhere that you've got community or that you hang out, try and get yourself plugged in and get a few reps so that you can get working on it.
And because you're doing it for free, if you ask the person that you're doing it for ahead of time, hey, I'd really appreciate a review after this. I want an honest review, whatever you think of it, but please send that to me.
100%. A review or even just the ability to have some business cards sitting out. You don't normally want to set up a big banner or something, overly promotional. I think if people think you're good, they're going to eventually come up and talk to you and want to work with you. But the key is just to get seen and to be out there and get a few reps under your belt, like I said.
Right. Yeah. Well, wedding day can be, and typically is for a lot of people, a high pressure situation, but clearly you can deal with that. So that's not an issue. But what are the mechanics behind what you do so that everything runs smoothly? Like, walk us through what that looks like in terms of your prep leading up to the event, so we know what we get ourselves into if we're looking at doing this as a side hustle.
Sure. Yeah. If you're going to go down the wedding path, so there's kind of a couple different things that you have to be pretty good at. And one is walking your couples through the process, right? I mean, if you get on the phone with them and they've never been married before and you say, hey, listen, what do you want? They don't know what they want, right? So you have to at least understand enough to ask the right questions and understand the flow of the day. And so what I'm normally doing is taking people through all the pieces that I'm involved with. If they're getting married at a church and we're not doing that, cool, no problem. We don't have to talk about the ceremony.
Right.
But for a lot of these, we're doing the ceremony, a cocktail hour, and a reception. And so we have to talk through the whole thing. When do people arrive? What music do you want being played as you walk down the aisle? Who's going to be speaking at the ceremony? Do you have readers? Is it just your officiant? Like, who needs microphones? That type of stuff, all the way through music preferences. It's what we're trying to do is just get the ability to make good decisions, right?
Yes.
Like, your taste in music is going to be unique. And then we're layering that with what our experience is and the fact that I've been doing this for a very long time now. And I kind of know certain pockets of what works, and I'm watching to see what are people responding to, but I'm trying to do that through the lens of what does this couple want, right? If they're coming to me and saying, well, I hate X, Y, and Z, you're like, great. We don't need that. Let's steer away from that. But we do need to find a happy space that still appeals to people.
Right.
And that's what all the prep is about. And so normally that's about a 90-minute meeting for me to go through minute by minute, who's being announced, how do I pronounce your names, what songs do you hate, what songs do you love, so that when we show up, we've got a really good game plan written down to exactly when I'm arriving and leaving and all that stuff. And so if you do that prep work right, the day just becomes about execution. Now it becomes a logistics exercise of get there on time, leave time for traffic, get everything set up, get presentable, get changed into your suit or whatever you're wearing, and all of that stuff. And that's much easier if we've done our homework properly on getting the couple prepared and understanding what they want.
So you would have that contact somehow, whether that's through email or a telephone conversation, about them hiring you. And then I would suspect that you get a down payment prior to that 90-minute sit down with them.
Correct. So a lot of weddings, and there's variation on it, but most of the time we're being booked somewhere between 6 and 18 months in advance.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting calls now about October of next year, right? So that tends to be a really busy time in this region. And so, yeah, from the point of, hey, we want to work with you, great, there's a deposit, there's a contract, we're good, everybody's protected. And then there's like nothing for probably many months. And, they don't need to talk to me every month. If they did, I'm here. But it's pretty low effort for us until we get close. And then it's, hey, let's sit down, let's talk about what you're doing. When's your photographer want to do golden hour photos? Like, all the like little stuff that's going on into their timeline, that's going to happen much closer, normally about a month out. And then we show up and hopefully knock it out of the park.
Absolutely. What's been your most memorable gig?
Oh, goodness.
It's hard to choose, probably.
Well, there's really great memories,
Okay.
and then you remember the stuff that didn't necessarily go as well. I'll give you a couple horror stories, and
Okay.
this is from like very early in the business.
Okay.
We were doing a father-daughter dance, and the song that they had asked for was Stevie Wonder, "Isn't She Lovely?"
Right. I know it.
Beautiful song.
Yeah.
The album version of that song starts with like 30 seconds of a baby crying. It's a really weird opening. If you go and listen to Stevie Wonder,
I've never
everybody
heard that.
remembers
Okay.
the actual song, but the actual album cut starts with like 30 seconds of a baby crying.
Oh, man.
So I was young. I hadn't previewed it correctly. Again, this is back in the days where
Sure.
we're working off CDs, so you can't just like skip ahead the same way that you can on a computer today. And we played it, and they're looking at me like I'm a complete idiot. I feel like a complete idiot, right? You're deer in headlights, just horrified.
Yes. Yes.
And it turns out it was the right song. So, and then I stopped it and was like, double checked it, and then still had to start it again because we still had to do this. It was one of the worst moments I've ever had. It was so embarrassing. You wanted to crawl under the table and die. That type of mistake, as young as I was probably 18, 19 years old at the time. You know, that sticks with me now. That shame,
Sure.
I still feel it today at 40 years old, or, you know, so it's just crazy how something like that, but really the energy that you get, and when you're in sync with the room, I mean, those are the memories that you love. I would do that for free, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like that exchange of energy where they're into it, you're into it, everybody's having fun. That's the most fun. I tell people what they're really paying me for is hauling all this stuff around and dealing with the logistics. But once we get to the fun part, it's really, really great.
Well, let's drill down on the business of being a DJ. If someone were
Sure.
wanting to start this today as a side hustle, not necessarily for weddings, but DJ in general, what hard costs would they be looking at starting out? Like equipment, subscriptions, what's involved?
Yeah, so you're really dealing first and foremost with, we need something to play back music on, and a professional set of speakers. You can spend probably as little as $750 to $1,000. You're probably going to need at least a microphone or two, maybe an inexpensive wireless, and then you're going to need something to play back the music from, like kind of a controller, mixer, and then like a laptop.
So you're
if
thinking like a cordless lav for yourself, and then another one.
Normally it's going to be a handheld. So like in my
Okay.
normal system, I've got a handheld for myself and then a wireless that can go out into the crowd.
Got it.
So if I'm doing something where somebody's giving a toast or somebody else is speaking, I always want two. But yeah, so that's probably, if you didn't have a laptop, let's say you're looking at $2,500 to $3,000 at the low end, you can spend as much as you want. So you know, a higher end system capable of more sound or whatever that's going to look like, you could spend $10,000, $15,000 if you wanted to, and you can always rent. That's the thing that I think so many people that might struggle early is they're looking at these big speakers, and if you get into the community, you'll see people that just have incredible rigs, and you go, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to afford that.
Right.
Go rent speakers. For $50 a night, you can go rent a speaker that will be completely adequate, and you can figure out if you really want to do this and if you want it to be part of your life. So I would encourage anybody that's on the fence about it, rent first, or go shadow another DJ and kind of spend some time roadieing, something like that. That's how I would really get started. But a couple $1,000s, you could probably get yourself going if you had a laptop already.
Oh, I love that rental idea, Ross, particularly if you do start out around that $2,000 to $3,000 price point, and suddenly, shortly into your career with this, opportunity for a much bigger gig comes along. You don't have to go out and buy all that stuff. The added, you can just rent it.
100%. And I still rent to this day. I've got rental houses that I work with when, you know, something that's in my sweet spot or my wheelhouse, I can absolutely do. I don't need to rent for that. But as soon as we go up a level and now we've got 450 guests rather than 150. And I go, what? Nope.
Right.
We're going to need something else because mine's kind of designed differently than that. And I can certainly handle it. It's just we got to scale up and make sure that we're charging appropriately for it.
And how does it work as far as the royalties payable to the artist? You're paying their music. How does that work?
So for private events, which is most of what weddings are, you're not dealing with that. If you're working in a public bar or a situation like that, generally they're going to have their own licensing because they're a public space. And so often a venue is already going to have that. So if it's a bar that's playing music or has a jukebox or whatever, they should have their ASCAP and BMI licenses or whatever the appropriate parties are, because those people are really, really intense on enforcing that, actually.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And so going into that scenario, then the bar owner or the pub likely already has that. You can tap into theirs. You don't need your own.
You do not need your own. It belongs to the venue. So yeah, DJs normally aren't being asked to provide that. And then, yeah, like a wedding is going to be considered private. It's not open to the public. So we don't necessarily need that sort of licensing for it.
So on that laptop that you're bringing into the venue, then, say for that pub, you are just tapping into your Spotify subscription?
So for me, and it, again, I've been doing this a long time. So I had all the CDs and then converted those CDs into the highest quality MP3 that I could. And so I have the physical media. I've got a digital copy of all that media that I had. Or if you're buying something new, you can buy the MP3 and just download it to your computer. There are services that serve that's called a record pool for DJs, where you get the radio copies and you can get clean versions and things like that, which is really important depending on what style of music you're going to play. So Promo Only is a big name, and there's a handful out there that compete with them. But so yes, having access to good quality legal versions where that company's working with the record labels and saying, hey, we want to service this music to DJs, that's really what you need, is that ideally. But there are some streaming options out there. They're just not I'm not comfortable with it. I'm getting where I am in age, and I don't want to be requiring the internet. Right. If I don't have Wi-Fi and I'm off somewhere, I don't want that to shut down what I can do. And so I always want the media to be on my system. Great.
So that site that you mentioned, Promo Only, does that give you the ability to then actually download the MP3s?
It does. Yeah. Okay. So Promo Only is a record pool, and yeah, they've got different levels and packages for different DJs depending on what you're trying to do. But they're a service that serves new music for DJs specifically.
Okay. So you can download that onto your hard drive, and that is yours to use for pretty much ever? Or is it like a subscription like everything else?
Yeah. So the subscription is to continue getting the new releases. In theory, once you download that media, because of their relationship, and I'm going to get into a spot where I don't know all the actual law, because of their relationship with the record label, it's supposed to be a promotional copy, and in theory, they could recall it, I think, but I don't understand how that would ever work with a piece of digital media. They've never called me and asked me to delete something off my computer. So I think in practice, it's basically yours to use, but they are very specific about making sure you're not sharing it and distributing those files to other DJs. They do watermark them and tag them to make sure that you're not just file sharing for free and giving that away.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Or they wouldn't exist.
Exactly.
How much do you charge per event?
So I'm typically between $2,500 and $3,000 to do a wedding. It kind of depends on a few different things. It can go above that if they're adding additional elements like lights and things like that we can provide. But that's an average day for me is in that range.
And that includes your time sitting down with them as well and planning everything out. And
it does. Yeah. I try to use a really simple formula. I don't see many other DJs use this. So anybody that's listening, if you want to get into this, just know this is a little weird. Most people don't do it this way, but I do flat rates for the day. And it's basically, if you want me to show up and do your reception, it's this. If we're adding another system for cocktails or ceremony, there's a little bit of an upcharge there.
Right.
But if your event ends at 9:30 instead of 10, I can't go do 30 minutes of somebody else's wedding. Right. Like that extra half hour is of no utility to me in my business. And so I think of it like you're reserving my day. Occasionally you have an event that goes a little bit long, but that's been way simpler for me, because normally what you'll see is if somebody says it's hourly, they go, okay, well, yeah, it's going to be $400 an hour. And you're like, wait, why am I paying you like an attorney? Right. And it's like, no, you're not really charging $400 an hour, because you're sitting down, you're meeting with them, you're driving, you're setting up, you're tearing down, you're taking everything home, you're getting your dry cleaning, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Average event, we probably invest 15 to 25 hours. Right. So if I'm only pricing performance time, what am I doing? To me, that's weird. I would rather just price the full time that I'm investing and say, this is kind of what it is, and then figure it out from there.
Plus, they're paying for your expertise and all the years you've been doing your skill set. I mean, that's huge, because they know if they book you, it's looked after. And if something were to screw up, you know how to fix it. You know who to reach out to. You know how to deal with it because of the years
Yeah.
you've been. And that's definitely worth charging for.
I mean, that's definitely the case with weddings. If you've got a good vendor team, if you've got a good planner, if you've got a good caterer, they're going to roll with the punches. They know how to deal with this stuff. They've been at it long enough. If it's your first time through it, and we've all been new, but it's just more difficult. And that's why I think if you can work with somebody, if you can shadow for a little bit and get the lay of the land and start to understand the flow of these days, you're going to be way better suited to doing a good job when you get out on your own.
Right. When I think of people in the speaking industry, of course, the fees vary so widely from what we call free to fee. And then, of course, the fees could be a few $100 to 5 figures. And so for the DJ starting out, doing that Thursday night, Friday night at the pub would be hard for you to say how much they could expect to be paid for something like that, right?
I mean, yeah, you certainly see some pub owners that believe exposure is very valuable, right? So in that free space, you'll get people that ask for that. And, doing a couple of those to get your feet wet, I don't think is the end of the world, but you just want to be careful you don't want to be abused, right? If they've got a busy pub and you're in there doing your thing for free, you're probably being abused. So just be careful with it. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing some free work to get your legs underneath you, but you just want to be careful about it. But most of those gigs are going to pay $200 to $500, depending on what market you're in and where you are in the country. So you can start to build yourself up that way and certainly make some money and just be able to reinvest in what you're doing. So if you're trying to get your first set of speakers, you can absolutely do it that way and then hopefully build up from there.
I was just thinking about that because you were saying between that sort of 2,000 to 3,000 to get started, even at the high end, the 3,000, if you're getting 500 a night, that's 6 gigs.
Totally. Yeah, no, if you can repay yourself within the first, and I don't know how many, you have so many guests on here that have wonderful business ideas. I don't know how many businesses you could start for $3,000 to $15,000 and then ultimately make 50, 60 grand a year, right?
Exactly,
I mean, you can and that's at a more mature level, but you can make pretty good money doing weekend work. And I don't know that there's many ways you can start that kind of revenue from as little of an investment, unless it's really, really high talent for work sort of stuff. Right.
Well, what are your revenues like now per year?
Yeah, so I kind of dial it up and down depending on what I have going on in the rest of my life. The last couple of years I've been in the $80,000 to $95,000 a year range in terms of total revenue for the business. I book a few guys when I don't want to work every single night, so I'm kind of scaling my personal effort back a little bit there and trying to get that to be a bigger portion of it. But that's where I've been, and that's still a lot of me just going out and doing the work. But I'm hoping to get more and more selective, where I'm just taking on stuff that I'm really excited to be a part of. And thankfully, I feel very, again, fortunate that that's where I'm at, but that's kind of where I'm trying to take it.
You mentioned bringing in a couple of guys. So periodically, you'll hire subcontractors to go and actually do the gig?
Exactly. And it's always, for me, it's always folks that I know really well. And I just know that they're good DJs. And so I can reach out and say, hey, are you available on this date? And then ultimately handle the contract for them. But yes, that'll be how it works, is they're still independent. We don't necessarily take them on as employees.
Right. But you're still doing the interaction with the customer and setting up that playlist or whatever you call it, doing all that, and then the person that you hire basically goes out and executes?
So normally the way I do it is I'll handle the booking and kind of get them to the point of, hey, we're ready to go. And then they'll do that meeting themselves. Right. And so I just don't want anything lost in translation. I want them to feel comfortable with the person that they're working with. And I feel like that tends to work best.
That makes sense.
Ultimately, what I pay is commensurate with that, right? I think some DJs pay a lower percentage because they're going to do more of the legwork, and then you just go out and be the show pony. But I'm expecting quite a bit in terms of what the subcontractor is doing, and so hopefully taking care of them on that.
That makes sense. Yeah. What's something that you're surprised by once you got into the business that you didn't anticipate, or because you've been in it so long, maybe what someone new going into it may not think of that they have to deal with?
I mean, those are really good questions. I think with any business, and this is my financial planner hat coming on, is just the act of dealing with business challenges, taxes, withholding, making sure that you're setting aside some money so that when the tax man comes in April, that you're not being blindsided by that. And so, the moment that you hang a shingle for any moment and say, I would like to do business, and somebody pays you, you now have a tax situation going on. So I think it's taught me so much about that. And it's been a little bit circular because of my two career paths that kind of coming together and having a lot of tax knowledge eventually. But I think that's the one thing that people aren't normally experts on in any business, right? You think, I like doing flowers for people. You don't think I like being a accountant and bookkeeper and taking care of all this stuff. And it really changes quite a bit. I mean, things that have surprised me, I think so many businesses, I think this is almost universal with small businesses, is that when sales aren't where people want, they want to compete on price. They all think price is the first thing that they're going to go after, and they start trying to cut. And I think more often than not, if you improve the product, you should actually price up more often than not. Again, that's not completely universal, and every business is a little bit different. Maybe you are dealing with actual pricing pressure, but for the most part, if you're not being hired and you know that you're in a competitive range or similar range to your other folks around you,
right,
then you need to work on your other skill sets, right? And with any business, it's where do your leads come from? Are you talking to enough people? And then it's, are enough of those talking people are enough of those contacts becoming sales? And so you may be having a problem not generating enough leads, or you may have a trouble with your sales process and not closing enough business from what you have. But that's the first thing to diagnose, is not, am I charging too much? Because normally that's not the case. I think most people have a failure somewhere else in the funnel, and they're not diagnosing that. They just think, I'll just cut my prices because more people will want to do it. And it just ends up making you look cheap. Be worth it, be good, get good at your craft, but normally it's not a pricing problem.
I agree. That's counterintuitive, because we run into this with speakers that I've mentored. If you're going to offer to do a keynote for $300, the person potentially hiring you is thinking, why is this so low? When everybody else is coming in and, for example, 4 figures, I'm not going to go with the $300 one.
100%. Yeah, you start going, why is this bad? Why don't these people believe in their product? Right? Like, it's so counterintuitive, but prices normally need to go up to make sure that you're conveying that you're worth it. And it's tricky to say that is like a universal blanket, but I've seen it many, many times in a lot of different businesses.
Right. This is not really an online business, or certainly for someone starting this as a side hustle. They're going to be knocking on doors in their community and in their area.
Yeah, it's ultimately contacting the public. I do think and I'm not very good at this, so I'll fully admit that this is not my strength, but I think the social media and demonstrating that you're good, and there's some guys out there doing a really, really good job with putting fun mixes and wordplay and silly things online that people go, oh my gosh, I want a DJ that can do that. I haven't been great at that, but there are some guys that absolutely kill it in the social media space and attract a lot of attention.
Okay.
But even if you're putting good stuff on social media, you've got to find a way to get it to people. So whether that's building a following or whatever you're doing, like, I'm sure there's people that are better at advising that than me, but I do see people doing a good job with it.
Right. And because this is a local business, doing something on like Google My Business, so you develop a presence there.
Yeah, for sure. You can see people with reviews on Yelp and things like that. Even though I kind of really get aggravated, they take down so many reviews that were like legitimate reviews. I'm sure every small business owner that's ever dealt with Yelp gets annoyed with them. But yeah, anywhere that people are looking for services, I think you have to be at least somewhat present.
Yeah. I think you've probably touched on most of them, but are there any other challenges you can think of for someone wanting to get into this business?
I think like anything, that if you turn a passion into a job, there's going to be days where it's a job. And that's the thing that I'll just warn people. And I have a tendency to do this. I actually had to stop myself last year. I love skiing, and I almost took a job as a ski instructor because I was thinking I'll get free passes. It'll be great. I'd love to learn teaching. I've thought about that as like a retirement career. How great would that be, just to be a ski bum and take people out and share the love of skiing? And then I was like, I don't want to turn all my hobbies into work. I don't want to strip the love out of it. And so I think the people that are inclined to go into DJing tend to be music fans. They love music. And sometimes DJing is not playing the music you love and demonstrating that for people. It's finding out the music they love and playing it back to them in a way that makes them happy. It's a service business. And so, if you're looking at it going, "Hey, I love music. I can't wait to share this with people." I think there may be some reality checks along the way, and you just want to be careful not to turn your passion into something that drives you nuts because everybody wants to hear Bruno Mars again, right? We're not. I'm not there to play my music for people, right? And so I try to be as humble as I can. I'm there. I'll play anything you people want to make sure that you're happy. Like,
Right.
hopefully
It's
within
your day.
some style.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm there for you. If you want me to put some silly song on repeat, like I'll take your money and let you do it. But that's not what most of my couples want. But,
Yes.
yeah, I think that's the part of it that I would just warn people on.
A good friend of mine had a business partner in that they were building houses together. And my friend was like you. We're going to give the customer what they want. And his partner was like, but they want this. And that's like totally stupid. You shouldn't be doing that in the room. And he's like, it's not up to us. It's up to the client.
I'll typically give people one pushback, right?
Right, okay.
And it's like, hey, well, this is what we want. And I'll say something along the lines of, completely get it. I understand. In my experience, this is what I've seen and why you may not want to do that. If they're like, that's what we want, we're going to do it. Great. And so I'll give the best advice that I can. I want them to have the day that they want. Sometimes they just don't see the challenges. So I hope to be a good consultant or helper in that way. But at the end of the day, if that's what they want me to do, I take instructions pretty well. I can get it done.
You want Bruno Mars 10 times, you got it. Right.
Let's hope not. That's a bad day, but yes, that is possible.
Is there anything that you wish you had done differently when starting your side hustle?
Oh gosh, I've gone through such a roller coaster with this, and like I said, I was doing this in college and even before. And coming out of college, I thought, that's the end. That's the end of this journey. That was a fun time. And I graduated college in 2007 and went into financial services in 2008, which was a horrific year to start in financial services. And I just got my butt kicked and literally was broke and going, I have to make some money. Right. I would have had to leave the industry. And to me, I had this skill set. I had this thing I knew how to do. And I was able to kind of get the engine started again. And it helped tremendously to kind of dig out of that. And it helped me not be in the same financial position that some other folks were in that same era because it was such a challenging time. And so I've kept it alive since then, partially because I'm grateful for what it did for me. And then I've come to appreciate the flexibility. I used to be really embarrassed. I wouldn't tell people, like if people knew me as a financial person, I wouldn't ever tell them that I had this thing. It was like this deep, dark secret because I just thought they would assume anybody that needs to do this is broke and bad at financial planning. And this guy must be an idiot. And why would he need to do that? And I've developed enough confidence that I just don't have that fear anymore. And now I'm proud of it. It's something that I'm glad is still in my life. And so, it's been a really interesting journey through that. But I wish I hadn't been scared of it. I just wish I had been kind of owned it a little bit more, even in the beginning, and not tried to hide it. But I understand still where that fear came from, honestly.
Right. Yeah, I totally get that. Having the financing background that I share with you. But that would have been a wonderful realization back in 2008 when things did go downhill so quickly in the financial markets, to be able to have this side hustle, this thing that you could ramp up again. Very cool. Yeah.
And I'm sure you see different versions of this, but there's so many people that if they're not happy about where they are financially, where they are in their careers and kind of like what's going on, my question is always kind of, what are you doing about it? Right. And for me, this is a thing that I can do about it. Right. And it's a lever that I can pull. I've got control over it. And whether that's a false sense of control or not, I feel so much better that it's like, I can make a difference right now. I can make an impact and go do something that is for my business, that's for marketing. I can send emails out to 10 wedding planners. I know if I'm having a bad day and if I'm just trying to generate something, there's something I can do always that might be positive. And so I like that sense. It feels like it gives me some lever of control back where I'm not just like blowing in the wind.
Nice. And the flexibility over your calendar. So if you do want to take off for a few weeks or something like that, you just don't book those dates, right?
100%. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. You can always protect it as long as you know in advance.
Well, do you have any plans to expand the DJ business, or are you happy keeping it as a side hustle?
I'm probably going to be a side hustle guy as long as I do this.
Yeah.
I take it seriously. I love what I do with it, but I don't necessarily see it being my full path. I do think my
Hmm.
financial services career is probably the main show for me. But that's not to say that people can't do it. I know a lot of DJs that have become full time and that's their aspiration. And so I don't mean any negative comment towards anybody that wants to do that and really wants to be a full time DJ, because I think it is a fun career and it's a rewarding career. And there's a lot of great stuff that you can do with it if you want to go down that path. But I feel so blessed. I like both things that I do. I'm not trying to get away from my day job. And I think that's how sometimes people approach a side hustle.
Right. Yeah. So keep doing what you love to do. And in this case, it's both of them.
Yep, exactly.
What's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Ross?
So we are on Instagram. It's at Bellasono Music. It's spelled a little interesting. It's BELASONO Music. That's probably the easiest way to find me. You can see stuff that we've done and some of the cool visuals and follow along as part of our journey. And feel free to reach out if anybody's got questions or wants to chat about this. I love talking shop. I'm happy to help anybody.
Fabulous. And we'll make sure that link is in the show notes.
Sounds great. I really appreciate you having me. I hope this was as fun for you as it was for me.
It certainly was, but I got one more question for you. What's your best tip to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle?
I probably just spilled the beans on this, but I think it's about taking control of your life,
Okay.
right? If you're not where you want to be for any reason, whether it's you're not doing the work that you want to do or your money's not where you want it to be, I think you got to do something. And I think a side hustle is a great way to do that. And if you can combine something you're passionate about and turn that into what you're doing for work, you're going to be that much better at it. So yeah, put your hand on the steering wheel. Don't just blow where the wind is going, and you can steer this thing. You're in charge.
Jump in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ross, for sharing your experience and insights on what it takes to run a successful business as a DJ. And of course, for being today's side hustle hero.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
One of the things that really resonated with me from this conversation is Ross's strategic decision to focus on weddings instead of continuing to take gigs from a variety of venues like bars and nightclubs or karaoke events. By honing in on weddings, he not only positioned himself as an expert in that space, but also made a deliberate choice to maximize his revenue from single-day events. That's such a smart approach, especially when you consider that we're talking about a side hustle here. For someone like Ross, who has no intention of leaving his full-time career, it's all about finding the right balance, accepting just enough dates to generate the income he wants without risking burnout. And when you think about it, this strategy can be applied to so many different side hustle ideas. Ross's example highlights how important it is to identify a niche that works for you. Weddings make sense for him because they're higher revenue, high impact events. But the beauty of DJing as a side hustle is that it's incredibly versatile. There's a wide range of venues and event types that you could specialize in to tailor your business to your strengths and preferences. For instance, you might decide to focus on parties for kids and teens, like birthday celebrations and school dances and sweet 16s. That's going to look a lot different from specializing in, say, corporate events, where professionalism and logistical precision are key. Or you could pursue gigs in the nightlife scene, catering to bars and nightclubs where energy and atmosphere take center stage, and that's a whole different vibe. Each of these niches attracts a different type of client and required skill set. What Ross helped me see is that the DJ side hustle isn't just a one-size-fits-all opportunity. It can be tailored to fit your goals, your personality, and your lifestyle. Lastly, I want to take a moment to highlight Ross's podcast called Check Your Balances. As side hustlers, personal finance, investing, and smart business decisions are all part of the journey. And that's what Ross and his co-host dive into. Through the lens of financial planners, they explore how to navigate some of life's biggest financial decisions, offering valuable insights and advice. I'll include a link in the show notes so that you can check it out. Well, that's a wrap for today. In the episode description, you'll also find a link to Ross's Instagram DJing site, my book, The Way Success Works, and my course, Turn Your Thoughts into Wanted Things, as well as a link back to the full show notes, which live at our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, it would be so appreciated if you would take a moment and add your comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.